So what I'm hearing all the time is like what's loud now is Jasmine Crockett. What's loud now is Trump talking about how they're dismantling it. What from to a person that's like not really understanding DEI and what it really does, like what would you say to that population of black folk that's like, I don't give a about it, or I don't know about it, or it's destroying us? Like, what would you say if those questions are rising up?
We should do for ourselves and one another. And since we built this country, right, I think there's some responsibility that the country bears in making sure that we're all right. There's got to be a subsidizing, in my opinion. Yes, amen. We do our own work. We create. We do know that whenever that happens, it gets blown up, right? Like literally bombs dropped on Philadelphia. Right. Literally. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, but nonetheless, we've been on knuckles before and we persevere.
But what I'm finding now is that because the onslaught, as you said, it's been thrown at us. Oh, he's a DEI hire. I don't personally think we should get angry when we hear that. Because I've stated in a video, I stated that first and foremost, Black Americans are not getting jobs they're not qualified for. Right. It's not happening. As a matter of fact, we're not getting jobs we're qualified for.
It's a great energy. So welcome to The Grit, where real conversations meet real culture. I'm your co-host, L. Michael Burt, along with your other co-host, Dr. Abdullah. No filters, no fear, just facts and fire. Today, we're going to dive into the world of DEI. Is it diversity, equity, inclusion, or divide, empower, indoctrinate? Hey, but before we get into the conversation, be sure to hit that subscribe button and like the video, because a little bit goes a long way. And we'll shoot it right over to Dr. Abdullah.
Greetings, everybody. This is Dr. Musa Abdullah. Wanted to give you a shout out and say hello. I hope everybody's doing well. Today, we have a very, very special guest. It's actually our first guest for the podcast, for the broadcast, and I wanted to let her introduce herself. This is a wonderful young lady that I've known for more than 20 years. So it's been a long time. We've aged, but she's aged much better than I have. Her name is Dr. Rema. Dr. Rema, would you do us a favor and please introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
It's so good to see you. It's really, really, really good to see you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me grace your show. I appreciate you so much. And it's so nice to meet you, Michael Burt. Appreciate the hospitality and this bomb platform that you all are on.
Thank you.
Okay. Appreciate that too. Good job. Good job. So you don't need to know. I'm Dr. Moose's friend.
Cut it out. Okay.
That's it, and that's all. If I'm Dr. Musa adjacent, you know I'm great. So that's
cut
what it is.
Out.
There you go.
Okay, so here's where we are. Here's where we are today. Because we like to give fresh perspectives on all things. Today, I wanted to talk about something that I have my own personal perspective of. I'm going to discuss it the way I typically do. Mike's going to give his perspective, and Rema's going to give us another perspective that we definitely need because of the spaces that she's worked within, she's advocated in, she's championed. I think it's very, very important that she let us know her thoughts. And today is going to be about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I have no qualms in saying that I am extremely happy that DEI is no longer on the table because it has done very little for the Black community. So I would like to go and say, Rema, what are your thoughts on DEI as a policy that's been implemented starting back in the 60s? What are your thoughts on it as a policy before we get into its being eradicated and taken away?
Right. So I don't think it's been a policy. I think it's been a talking point, right? Mm-hmm. I haven't seen any policies, honestly, that come straight with mandates around diversity, equity, and inclusion. When there have been, I think what you might be referring to would be the quotas back in the day, affirmative action back in the day, right? Where we try to mandate, right? You have to diversify your workload. You have to, I mean, your workforce. You have to diversify your student body. You have to hire and promote and recruit people who heretofore have not been in these spaces. Well, every time that's happened, there's been a big backlash, right? And we do know that DEI, in a lot of ways, I agree with you, but in some ways I don't. But DEI is code, right? It's code language for unqualified. It's code for the N word. In
Right, I agree.
Michigan, where I am, like if you say DEI, you basically spitting on people. Like in Michigan, it's black, right? That means like unqualified black person got hired, right? So I too have had my issues with DEI. It's anytime that black people get anything, we're the tide that lifts all boats anyway, right? So affirmative action, who benefited? It wasn't us. It was white women, right, that benefited from this affirmative action and quotas. We're the tide. So we fight. Everybody else comes up, but this still continues. This divide still continues. We're still at the bottom, and people are just progressing. What's happening now with this coded language of DEI is still an assault on black people. And what white women didn't reckon would happen, didn't actually anticipate would happen, is that it's an attack on them too. So have you seen that list of all the names, all the words that are DEI related? Have you seen this list?
No, I haven't seen the list. I haven't seen it.
They keep adding to it, but of course the top of the list is African American. Like go through your programs in the next 90 days and review anything that says African American, anything that says BIPOC, anything that says Latino, anything that says LGBT. They left the QIA off. That's curious, but it's for a different conversation. And then they have women. Anything that says women or woman on here, you should be looking to see if that program is exclusionary. So when the backlash against black people comes, which it does with DEI, I think it's coded language, everyone's going to lose. And what they haven't recognized is the people who they generally root for are the white folks, which are white women. They're about to lose too. I don't see this as a policy issue because there haven't been any federal policies, honestly, that say that we should hire according to merit. If there were policies that said we hire according to merit, you wouldn't need a DEI policy.
Okay.
Because we'd be in the door.
Well, here's my issue. We all know that DEI overwhelmingly affects and disproportionately empowers white women, BIPOC. I like to definitely separate the POC because black and people of color, they're two different entities, right? So then you got people of color, then you got LGBTQ, then you got people with, then you have individuals with disabilities. But in doing my research, there was another layer that they're putting out there that I have never heard before, which is very interesting. They're now lumping in upper and middle class black professionals have benefited from DEI policies, right? And I literally have never heard that before. Never. But they're now saying that, according to this study, black professionals in white collar industries have seen many gains, particularly in terms of hiring and mentorship opportunities.
What?
However, these benefits tend to be concentrated among those who already have access to higher education and professional networks. Now, I had never heard this before. I was always under the knowledge that white women were the primary benefactors of DEI because they, according to all the research, only 8% of quote unquote DEI hires were Black American. The policy, along with affirmative action, was set up for us, the freedmen, not just flat black people. It was for Black Americans in particular, the descendants of those that were in chattel slavery. But what I'm finding now is that because the onslaught, as you said, it's been thrown at us. Oh, he's a DEI hire. I don't personally think we should get angry when we hear that, because I stated in a video, I stated that first and foremost, Black Americans are not getting jobs they're not qualified for.
Right.
It's not happening. As a matter of fact, we're not getting jobs we're qualified for.
Correct.
And you want to go one step further than that, we're not getting jobs we're overqualified for.
Correct.
So for us to take on this burden like some of the Democrats are doing in these houses by talking about the dismantling of it, why are we so hell-bent on defending this policy?
Can I tell you why I am?
Sure.
Yes.
So I do think I ended that little tirade that I had on if they hired on meritocracy, we would get hired. Right? That's just, if you're hiring based on who's the best, the most agile, the fittest for the job, we wouldn't have a conversation about Black people getting jobs or any other minoritized group, right? You would hire the best person for the job. That's not what's happened, right? We hire based on who we know. And so for closed opportunities, the DEI, if you have any kind of strategy toward it, not a policy, but a strategy toward it, might alleviate some of the bias and the exclusion. Could perhaps. Now, I'm concerned about this fight on DEI. I have a whole conference that is free, centering Black children in education. Right, it's online. I've had Dr. Tyrone Howard, Gloria Latson-Billings, Pedro Noguera, Sean Harper, Mark Lamont Hill, Judy Austin. I've had anybody you can name that's out here doing solid work for us in our liberation. I've had these folks in this conference giving their knowledge for free, state funded. They just canceled this contract yesterday.
Okay.
Because centering Black children in education. So that grant is gone as of yesterday because of this attack on DEI. So sure, it's not just about hiring. There's money. Now that you know about TRIO programs, you know about
I went to the TRIO program for years. Yeah.
Correct. You know about this. The executive order from 2 weeks ago says all TRIOs gotta go. All TRIO.
So you talking about upward bounds, college bounds?
All of it.
Okay.
Out of here. And any program that targets all those keywords, I just texted it to you, all those keywords, any program targeting that needs to be dismantled. Black graduation, gone. So it's not just about hiring, which we can talk about that all day, that if they ever decided to make it about merit, they done lost already. Because if we think about who's the most educated subpopulation in the United States, is me. Black women. Black women have more degrees. Yes, we have more degrees.
This, but my question is, are those degrees marketable and are those degrees lucrative?
Well, they're not, because we're the last hired, we're the last promoted, first fired. Our debt to income ratio is super high because we paid for these degrees, right? And so our credit scores are trash. So home ownership, all this like generational wealth is all again foreclosed because we've chased this educational dream. But if we're saying education is your key to success, your passport to all things American dream, is it for Black women? Is it? And if it were just based on merit, then we're in the building, right? And we're the ones taking the leadership positions that we don't get granted. So, okay, hiring is one thing. These programs have now been gutted overnight. It's a big deal. Go ahead. My money gone. My money.
No. Listen, I always respect your work because I know for a fact, and that's because I know you personally and I follow your work. I know that you genuinely care for our community. You get what I'm saying? And that's very important. But I'm going to say something that may not resonate too well. I think that in order for us as a community to move forward, we're going to have those programs gutted. We're going to have to be, as my brother-in-law always says, we're going to have to be on our knuckles in order to be successful.
We've been on our knuckles though.
We've been living on our knees, but we ain't been on our knuckles yet.
Oh, I've been on both.
Well, let me say this. Okay, so I always do my little research here, and I was looking up. I said, well, I knew some things, but I wanted to be sure. The Black Americans' points of prosperity, right? A lot of people don't really think about things like this, but I do. When were we our richest? And in our last broadcast, we discussed about how after Reconstruction, Black Americans, straight out the plantation, freedmen, we own 0.5 on a conservative end, 1% on a liberal end of America's wealth. By 2025, we own 3.5%. So at best, we went up 3% or 2.5%. We're talking right after, we're talking about during Reconstruction, right? So between 1865 to 1877. That's when the Freedmen's Bureau was established. But these gains they were severely undermined by Jim Crow, right? Then the early 20th century, 1900 to 1920s, we're talking about Black Wall Street and Greenwood and Tulsa, Oklahoma, communities in Durham, North Carolina, Detroit's Black Bottom. These communities were gutted by the Bridges and Road Act. I forgot what it's called specifically, but they put highways and freeways through our communities.
Right through them.
All right. Then we got
they bombed one, right?
They bombed Greenwood. Greenwood and Tulsa. They bombed that one.
Yeah.
Right. Then you got post World War II in the Civil Rights era, 1940s, 1970s. The Civil Rights Movement led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which we got done in dirty with that because we allowed everybody and their mama to tag along and grab hold of it, which is what we should not have done, looking out through flat blackness. We just wanted to get people over here that we thought would be our reinforcements. They had a totally different ideology of white supremacy, so they were not going to be our allies. Then the late 1990s to the early 2000s. Okay, we already know why they jumped over the 80s, because that was crack, right? That was where we were intentionally sabotaged with that. So the point is that during these times of prosperity, never once was any policy or edict by the government the primary reason why we were doing well. We were doing well because we made a conscious, intentional decision to do well. We worked alongside one another. We had jointed families. We worked together to get these things going. And we didn't need the policy. And I truly believe that in order to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs. And we're going to have to be down to negative in order for us to say we only have ourselves. That's just my take on it. Your thoughts, Mike?
I'm just listening, and I don't work I work for myself. So I don't I've not dealt with DEI. The only thing I really know about DEI is what I hear, because I don't deal directly with it. So what I'm hearing all the time is, like, what's loud now is Jasmine Crockett. What's loud now is Trump talking about how they're dismantling it. To a person that's like not really understanding DEI and what it really does, like, what would you say to that population of Black folk that's like, I don't give a shit about it, or I don't know about it, or it's destroying us? Like, what would you say if those questions are rising up?
That's you, Dr. Rema.
Oh, it's for me.
Oh yeah, definitely for you.
So I kind of feel like you said a lot, Dr. Musa, and then it just kind of we like glossed over it about self-empowerment and self-determination and not needing a handout, right? I don't know that it's either or, right? I think it's both and. So, amen. We should do for ourselves and one another. And since we built this country, right, I think there's some responsibility that the country bears in making sure that we're all right. There's got to be a subsidizing, in my opinion. Yes, amen. We do our own work. We create. We do know that whenever that happens, it gets blown up, right? Like literally bombs dropped on Philadelphia.
Right.
Literally,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but nonetheless, we've been on our knuckles before and we persevere. And the government also should be assisting us. I think one of the things you said earlier about middle-class Black folks. So I was just talking to my makeup artist the other day, and she was telling me that this new grant, she's a first-time home buyer, and there's a grant for $25,000, right? She's been tracking this grant because she's been saving for this house for about 5 years. She's ready to buy. The clause that's in that grant now that was not there prior to this administration is that if you have parents who owned a home in the last 3 years, you're no longer eligible.
I heard about that.
That's crazy.
I did hear about that.
It's insane. My parents could have just bought this home 3 years ago, and we're finally able to get some kind of generational wealth, that we're building. And you're saying because your parents are well off enough to have bought a house in the last 3 years, you are no longer eligible for the subsidy that is owed, quite frankly, is owed. So it's not even just about programs that maybe the average, person wouldn't know about. That maybe they don't know TRIO and Upward Bound, and maybe they don't know about my conference that's centering Black children in education. Maybe they don't know about that work. Cool. They know that they can't buy a house now, and that their parents are still scraping and scrapping to pay whatever mortgage they have. And this government is saying, "Oh no, your parents are well off enough to give you that $25,000. The government doesn't owe you." Yeah, no, the government does owe.
I have a question. So if your parents recently purchased within 3 years, or if they've owned a home for 3 years or more?
3 years or more, owned a home.
Okay.
It's different.
That's different. Yeah, that is different. That is extremely different. And but then again, on one end, I am a reparationist. I believe in reparations. 100%.
Why you don't think DEI is reparations?
DEI is not reparations.
You don't think
well, let me tell you why. I'm gonna tell you why. Because it is not specifically for our group. Reparations would be specifically for our group. It will be a set aside for specifically our group, and it's not. Once you start including other groups, it limits and minimizes the amount of resource that will be given to the members of our group.
So you don't want to share?
No, not at all. Not at all. Because no one shared in the labor that built this nation. So no, I don't want to share. The Asians didn't share when they threw that clause in the COVID Act. The Ukrainians aren't sharing. The Latino immigrants aren't sharing. And I'm in a sanctuary city, so I take that personally. They're not sharing at all. As a matter of fact, they have vitriol towards our group.
So what would sharing look like?
What would sharing look like?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand.
You said they're not sharing. What would it look like if they were sharing?
Well, first of all, when I say the group, the individuals of the group, I'm talking about the people that are instituting the policies or the decrees. They're not giving us the same benefits. For example, New York City right now is finally, because of Mayor Adams' pivot on immigration, because of his pivot, they're leaving now, thereby lessening the load of students in the classroom. We were functioning like 30 to 35 kids in the classroom when we know optimum number is 12 to 15. They were giving them access to our SNAP benefits that were paid for by tax dollars. They have access to free medical care, access to free housing. Black Americans have been the #1 homeless population in New York City for over 2 decades. We didn't have access to any of those things. But because of sanctuary city status, the immigrants had access to it. I don't believe in giving my tax dollars to people who have not been a part of the system, who have not been instrumental in the building of the country. I just don't believe in it.
I kind of feel like that argument is a little bit problematic in that one, you even in your language, you're saying our SNAP benefits. We don't have anything. Like, I don't see myself as an arbiter or a purveyor of anything financial in the United States. I don't think that they're taking anything from me, because what do we have? So this kind of argument against immigration is a distraction. It doesn't matter who comes, right? It doesn't matter who shows up, and it doesn't matter who taps into the system. The system's, to your point, the system's obligation to us is separate and apart from whatever they do for anybody else. And until we demand that we get our just desserts, it doesn't matter who else is getting what. My eye is not on that ball.
Well, let me say this. I agree with you to a degree. Let me say this. I agree to a degree, because it should be, ideally, it should be separate and apart, right? But the research has shown the net negative that we face, that we experience because of immigration. Immigrants in this country are placed above us and used as a buffer class. So they're utilized as the reason why they can't give us, even though we know it's a red herring, we know it's a lie.
Yes.
We know this. We're fully aware. But my thinking is this: until you're able to satisfy the debt that is owed to the freedmen, to foundational Black Americans, until you're able to satisfy that debt, how dare you give any funds to any other group? That's how I feel. And and to be very honest with you, I feel about groups that are already here. I'm not just talking about the ones that are just coming, to the ones that are already here. So I'm looking at how communities have been established through grants, through loans that we don't have access to. You're talking about the TRIO program being being eliminated, which is, I didn't even know that. I'm very saddened, because I worked in Upper Bound and College Bound for 20 years, right? So I worked in different facets as a gear up counselor, a teacher, trying to think, a college bound counselor, a upper bound educator as well. So I understand the need and how many children, Black children in particular, benefited from those programs. But once we need to be very honest about those programs service a very few of our children. To be very honest with you, very few of our children even know about those programs. And that's out here. I can speak out here. Speak for that out here.
So what does that have to do with it? So the program should still exist, even if they're servicing 2 Black children. Mm-hmm. That's 2 more than they had previously. Like, okay, if not everyone can benefit from it, doesn't mean it doesn't have merit, and doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. And it's not to me, that's still a part of the reparations conversation. All the supports that are necessary in schools should be there. Now, I'm gonna give it back to you where you said, basically, I think this was your argument. We can't depend on these folks. We got to kind of depend on ourselves. Like, we got to be on our knuckles and get to the kind of collectivism that would mean that we are not dependent on anyone including the government, for handouts, that we get it done ourselves. Okay, cool. I would say education is the model for that, right? When we were in segregated South before we were integrated, we had a higher percentage per capita of PhDs. Do you see these bubbles right here?
Yeah. What is that? I don't know where that came from. That's never been on here before.
It's that Riverside. So we don't know what.
We're not live, so I don't know what it is.
Right.
Like, there's bubbles? Okay. Go back. So, okay, so before we decided that we have to be with white folks in order to have anything quality, we had smart folks. We had our own self-sustaining schools, and we had people who were getting PhDs at a higher rate than what we have right now. Okay, cool. You talked about the classroom sizes in you said New York, where you're like 30, which is average at this point. You do recognize that we were making it happen with preschoolers and high schoolers all in the same classroom, right? And with one teacher modifying and making accommodations all over the place, like making it happen. And so it's not that these programs or the funding, it's really a will. It's really a will for, because there's always a way. There's really a will. I go back to, we have to hold people accountable, ourselves, each other, and the government. It's not about looking at somebody else and what they get. What are you not getting for us, and what do we want collectively to happen? I think that's the only argument we can make. Looking at what other people get, we could look all day. There were reparations for so many groups, literal, that are still happening today. Reparations for people who were in internment camps. Like, they know how to do this. When do we demand ours?
Well, I'll speak to the point of that you made about the kindergartners, when we had the one schoolhouse, right? The one schoolhouse, and everyone, they did differentiated instruction. The difference, though, is that there was a level of intentionality, right? There was a desire to move those children forward so they could be prosperous, right?
That's what I just said, the will.
Right, I agree. Oh, no, I agree with you 100%. But now, you've worked in public ed, you know. And I remember a wise woman told me something. She told me this. She said, you really do care, but you aren't really making any noise. And I asked this woman, I said, well, what do you mean? She said, because if you were really making some noise, they'd have been got rid of your ass. You know what wise woman told me that?
Somebody who's been let go.
Dr. Rema told me that years ago. She told me that years ago. She said, if you were really making some serious noise, they'd have got rid of your ass. And that always stuck with me, So effectively what I've been doing in different spaces is get rid of myself, because I'm like, I'm not going to be complicit in the failure of these children. You can hang that up. I'm out, right? And that's because of what you planted in my head, because it was really a mind screw. But in those spaces where I am currently, I see a different level of intentionality, because I'm in a smaller, I'm not in a district school. I'm in a small singular school, K-8, where the desire on the part of the administration and the majority, not all, the majority of teachers is to move the children forward, right? So I 100% agree with you. But right now, as it stands, we can make those demands, but we're so fragmented. And I don't know if you saw our last broadcast, we talked about the utilization of the Divine Nine and those organizations to move the community forward, and how we don't come together. We're still fragmented by organizations, neighborhoods, degrees, professions, all of these things. Right now, we can make those demands, but we have some people that they don't even agree that reparations is something that's old. They think it's a handout.
Okay, so let's talk about it this way. If we have a DEI conversation, like instead of having a reparations conversation, now you all day I think we're owed reparations all day, but okay, most Black people, I think, Michael, you named all these people who were on their soapbox about DEI and how pissed off they are. Most Black people recognize that these DEI policies mean something, and that there is an L, a collective L we're taking by not fighting against the eradication of these programs, because they're not policies. If we can coalesce around that, why say let DEI DIE? Why not say, okay, if this is the point where we all come together, come on with it. Like, if that's because part of these DIE strategies and programs, part within that, embedded underneath it, is a sort of reparation. I'm hearing what you're saying is not adequate enough, right? TRIO doesn't hit hard and far and wide enough to be a reparation, but underneath it is a little bit of a reparation. So if you can get that conversation started and coalesce some people around DEI and be outraged that, you know, they're gutting these programs, why can't that be the start where we come together?
For me personally, I just don't believe in fighting for policies that do not directly, at this point, scraps from a table are not acceptable. And I don't really, I've never, I'm going to tell you, when I heard the guy Barry say, a rising tide lifts all boats, that never sat right with me.
Why not?
Because it spoke to us being once again the mules for society, and us getting what everyone else is getting, even though everyone else did not sojourn the way we did. They did not have the same trials and tribulations, and they're not owed what we're owed. That's why my mindset is very niche. I'm very specific about who, what, when, and where. About, and when it comes to gaining resources that this country owes us, freedmen, foundational Black Americans. I ain't talking about just Black folk. I'm talking about the political term of freedmen. I'm talking about the specific group of Black American. I'm talking about us getting what we're owed from the government because we did the work. But when you're talking about coalescing around a policy or programs such as
I was about
programs,
to say, she said it's not a policy.
Right, ain't no policy. She's gonna make sure to say that the program of DEI or affirmative action, effectively, we are fighting for other groups outside of ourselves to once again be elevated above us and gain access to resources that they did not earn. And my thing is, I'm not going to worry about them getting it. I'm going to worry about us not getting it.
Correct. And that's where the coalescing comes. Like, listen, I think DEI has been a lot of smoke and mirrors because it hasn't had a policy behind it. Because people could just choose, oh yes, we're going to have a strategy around DEI and this is what it's going to look like. And it could be some, I think in cuss words. I've been really careful. I'm trilingual, so I code switch often, but I've been trying to make sure. It's been some hot garbage, right? So I've had a qualm about DEI, and I've wanted it to DEI because it's been a dog whistle, right? That means NIGGER, in my opinion, like particularly in Michigan. You cannot argue, though, that something is better than nothing. And when I had my DEI little initiative taken away yesterday, it became real. I'm not trying to figure out what somebody else is getting in relation to me or in comparison. I got work to do. for the collective liberation of our people. That work has been halted.
In this situation, what do you do?
So Centering Black Children in Education, there's a whole website, by the way, you might just want to check it out, CBCE conference. Oh, okay, cool. So in that, you see that there's a lot of programming. There's a Sankofa student coalition group. We go into schools and we talk to students about their collective liberation. We evaluate the school policies to see where there's inequity, to see where there's racism, to see where there's anti-Black racism, where there's sexism, where there's homophobia, like all Islamophobia. Like we comb through and teach them how to analyze, think critically. We also teach them how to read their world with YPAR, with youth participatory action research projects, right? And at the end, they do this whole big thing. It's awesome. And we play a lot of games, and I learn all the cool moves. Some of them I learned, some of them I just can't get with. But and all the lingo. That's one arm. Another arm, I take Black women principles and we do wellness together. We only practice wellness. We go to JIT class or to what do we just do? Zumba. We travel to Ghana. We travel to LA and to Florida for retreats, and we're going to Belize this year. Like all we do is radically take care of ourselves. And these are Black women principles in Detroit. Then there's a conference that has all the big people who are coming to talk about Black children. I have a Black ball. I want y'all to come to the Black ball in June. All Black everything, beautiful. We had oxtails and sweet potato pie last year. I mean, it's blackity black, black, black. But then, and Dr. Musa, who didn't put me on his dissertation committee, by the way, I just want to make everyone know that he invited me and then disinvited me and didn't even tell me I was uninvited. Shabby.
I was just privy to that conversation.
Very ashy behavior. Ashy behavior. But I am good at getting dissertations over the line, and I am good at supporting doc students. And so this year we have a Sankofa Research Intensive where we're bringing people to Wayne State, to Detroit, and those who are interested in researching with Black communities, for Black communities, are coming to get support so that they can write a bomb dissertation and go out into the world and do research that is humanizing. So there's a lot of programming that happens that now has been gutted overnight. These kids are coming to the campus next week, are they? Because that bus costs $1,800.
It's money,
right.
Baby. Yeah, it's money.
Right.
Yeah.
So now that fund is taken away, what would be your plan, or do you have one, or what's your response to that?
It was yesterday, so I'm on my knuckles, as Dr. Musa said. I'm on
knuckles, baby. On the knuckles, gotta be on the knuckles.
So I gotta scrap. I gotta figure out how I'm gonna get. Part of it is where's the collective? If you're talking about we got to be self-sufficient, blah, blah, blah. Okay, on that cbceconference.info, there is a donate button. Like, how can we...
But guess what? I'm with you on that. And see, that's where I'm glad you said that. Thank you. By saying what you said, when we recognize that our people are putting together programming, institutions, or initiatives that benefit the overall community, we need to collectively pull together.
Yeah.
Right. That's where I am. 110%. But the problem is we're always still working on trying to integrate, assimilate, and work with those that we know. And this is my own, no, I'm not going to go that route because I want to keep it smooth. I'll say that we are hell-bent on allying with individuals that we know ultimately do not want to see us prosper as a community. So when you speak on hit that donate button, I truly believe we don't need extraordinary people to do a bunch of things. We need a bunch of ordinary people to do extraordinary things.
Child, I'm with you on that. Yeah. Because right now I lost a lot of sleep last night thinking about how in the entire world. I saw one of the principals today. I was at her school last week. She was like, they're wondering when you're coming back. I'm wondering too.
Okay, I have a question for you because it seems to me that, and we're going to diverge a little bit, but I hope this is okay.
No, good.
I heard you say that you speak to and have uh, wellness
Women.
activities for Black women principals
Yes, sir.
who are in the Black educational space
Correct.
highly represented. Would you
Well,
agree or disagree with that, first of all, before I go forward?
highly
Mhm.
is that's all relative, don't you think? I just
I
said we're
think, yeah,
okay.
go
I just
ahead.
said we're the most educated subpopulation. Our
Hmm.
degrees are in helping professions like social work,
Right.
education, right? And
Hmm.
so where we mostly get our degrees is in a place where we can do some good for the community.
Okay.
Are we highly in the professorate, for example? We're less than 1.5%.
Okay. That's in the professorate.
Correct.
What does the professorate mean for people who don't know? Because you're talking too smart for everybody.
Right.
Oh,
Right. You got to break it down a little bit.
so in academia, in tenure
Right.
track positions, right? We're not highly represented. Black
Right.
men either, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah. Okay. That's where I was going.
okay,
I think that we are so focused on lifting one particular subsect of our group. And I've had these discussions about how the
you're
Black
good.
community in particular is a matriarchy. Um, and I would like to go, yes, yes. And I would like to go forward as to say,
Earlier, Michael. I just want to know if
no,
I
you
said.
said the world, but I'm talking about in the Black community in particular. Black community, we're
Well, when
matriarchy.
I think about the world, wouldn't be no world without a black woman. So let me
Okay,
just put my glasses on so I
okay,
can see.
okay, okay. My question is, where are those initiatives for the Black men in education, considering that all the research shows having a Black male in educational spaces, particularly between K to 6, increase graduation rates significantly in Black children, and those graduation rates are acknowledged and recognized in all genders, all races.
Okay, so I let me just hit you with another stat real quick, but and then I'm
Mhm.
gonna tell you where you can find that. Um, if you have, oh, that's not me.
Sorry.
Hey,
Sorry about that. Sorry
ringtone.
about that. That was me. Sorry about that.
If you have a black woman as an educator in your K-12 experience, you are 12 times more likely to go to college. And that's across
Let me say
all.
that again. If you have what again?
A black woman educator,
A Black woman educator,
12
K
times
through
more
12.
12 times more likely to go to college across
Okay.
all races, right? Let's be clear about
Right.
that. Secondly, when I got this grant to do the work with black women principals, my counterpart, I can introduce you to him. I can put you on a group text when we get off of here. My counterpart, Dr. Curtis Lewis, I don't know if you know this cat. He
It
got
sounds
a
familiar.
grant. He got a grant to do the same work with black men. And
Okay.
so his organization is Black Male Educator Association, and that's what he does. He focuses on black men getting into education at the teacher level, at the counselor level, at the as y'all are always on these like cultural dean, basically disciplinarians, but deans of culture, that's what they are, and then principals, right? So his wellness is his wellness focus is black men. So it's not like
Okay.
I just did it on my own and forget y'all blah blah blah. There's another counterpart who's doing the same work with black
Okay.
men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. I didn't know that. Thank you. That gives me extra
No, and
context.
I could put y'all in a chat. You probably would like each other a lot. I
Okay.
could put y'all on a text after this.
Right.
He's
I
always
think
open
that
to
I
build.
think well, I think the reason why I asked that question is because in order for us to traverse any of these barriers that could potentially be set up against us, and obviously you are witnessing and you're experiencing them now, I think we need to become as a collective unified front. I think that the powers that be, dominant society, however you like to term or classify them, they utilize the fact that there is a schism that is propagandized between black men and black women. And I'm thinking that in these instances, we have nothing but one another.
I agree.
To be successful. It's no way all black women could be successful without us, and there's no way all black men can be successful without black women, right? So I'm believing that, and I'm really leaning into the ideology that in order for us to be successful, we're going to have less than what we've had thus far. Because in the recesses of our mind, we genuinely believe that there's going to be some program or some saving grace from the dominant society that's going to come out of benevolence, that's going to allow us. I don't know. I don't know why we believe it.
We just enumerated all the ways that we built our own capital and it was obliterated. Why would we think that we're getting a handout?
I don't know. I don't know. I was sharing with Mike earlier. There was a circumstance that occurred, situation that occurred just at a grocery store today. I go to a grocery store, I'm in line, got a little sandwich or whatever, and there was an older woman in her 70s, maybe 80s, and she was just buying I'll never forget, now I don't know why it's burning my brain, she was buying a loaf of bread and 2 rolls of toilet paper. And she was running her card through and it just wasn't going through, and she said, I don't know, and she said something that really bothered me. She said, I don't know why it's not working. I had $11 on it earlier. And that hurt me to hear. That one of my elders is just trying to make it on that $11.
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper and a loaf of bread. Now, I do understand that, as I explained to Mike, I do understand that there are always circumstances. You know, maybe she made a bunch of poor life choices. We don't know. But considering how disenfranchised we are as a community, we have not established a business class. We've not established commerce that can sustain our own communities. So much so that woman should have access to more resources for simple purchases. Yep. And I was saying this earlier as well, that the businesses that thrive in our communities are not major conglomerates. Mm-hmm. They're not huge corporations. They're mom and pop shops for the most part.
Yeah.
You know, and I said out here, they're Jesus and his cousin, but in Detroit is Ahmed and his brother, you know, that got the small businesses that run and they thrive and they take those resources back to their community. But those are the only thing. We don't even take the time to say we need to create these types of institutions, and having programs taken away from us may very well show some of us we really have no friends.
Yeah. So
that's where I am, because I know we don't have friends. Everyone on this call knows we don't have friends, but there are some people that are still buying into the political process, vote and then walk away, vote with no action. They don't believe in political action committees. They don't believe in those. They don't believe in setting up institutions, creating the funding and the resources so that you can do like everybody else, buy your politician and get him to do your bidding, or her bid, get him or her to do your bidding. No one thinks like that. They're thinking like, oh, they're not gonna take away this, they ain't gonna take away that. We gonna be good.
We're not.
And I'm like, no, that's not a thing. We are obsolete. And I was just telling Mike, this book right here, Black Labor, White Wealth.
I just ordered it.
By Dr. Claude Anderson, speaks. He wrote this book in the 90s. It spoke to the Black community's demise if we don't get it together by 2013. And everything he said in that book has come to pass. Everything. And I was telling Mike, I said, I genuinely believe, after reading this book and studying, this is my 3rd time reading this book, but I'm reading it with a little bit more intentionality. I'm reading it slowly. I genuinely believe that the well-to-do in our communities have been told, hey, look here, man. Your community is done. I'm sorry. It is what it is. You can blame it on who you want, but that ain't the problem we're going to talk about right now.
Yeah.
You need to save yourself.
Yeah.
Because you can't tell me that these people who have millions and billions of dollars, that have access to resources, just connections, haven't stopped to say, you know what? We got food deserts all over urban areas and where we are predominant. Let's start a chain of grocery stores. Cleaners. Something is monstrous of an undertaking, but could have been done a long time ago. Textile mill. A textile mill could fund an entire community. One textile mill. Our politicians do nothing but fight for policy, programming, and rules and laws that don't benefit us directly. We're always on the back end of things, or we're gonna get a little crumb off the table. And I'm gonna land with this point. I have been a staunch proponent for building our own table. Yeah, it's gonna be a little raggedy. It's gonna be a little wobbly. If you put your elbow on it the wrong way, you might get a splinter. But if we all put the work in it, by the time our grandchildren get to that table, it's gonna be smooth. It's gonna be beautiful. And I think that the elimination of these programs is detrimental as they may be in the short term. I think that long term, we can benefit by recognizing we have no friends, we have no allies.
So I think this is where we converge, our interests align, in that what I notice now, particularly when Trump took office initially anyway, but now this open attack on what DEI is or is not, right? It's sounding the alarm. So those people who did think that we had friends now know that we do not. And what I'm saying is, whether or not you believe in DEI programming is of no consequence. Right now, you have a group of Black folks who are at 911. It's an emergency. Mayday, mayday. So here's the opportunity for us to all come together and coalesce around the emergency, knowing now that we have no friends. Because what you already knew, now we know. Everybody knows at this point. And DEI was the alarm.
Okay.
Well said.
Well said.
Well said. You know, I didn't dive into the conversation much because I was learning a lot. Again, I didn't deal with DEI up until now when it was, monstrous in the view of people. But in this conversation, I think that people who are watching need to really take this conversation to their world and their communities and their homes and really start having the conversation of how do we build our own, how do we connect, how do we converge, and not assimilate, but create from what we have. And I think these are great conversations. Take this into your world. And Dr. Rema, I mean, I could hear you for another hour. You know what I'm saying? Because you make sense, and I love the way you and Musa talk and have conversations that may have some opposite views, but you have clear communication with one another, and it's beautiful here and beautiful to see. And I know that people that's going to watch this, they're going to take something great from this. And hey, call to action. Make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And we'll see you next time on The Grit. Peace.